I'm Sarah Miller, 32 years old, and I own a busy interior design business in Portland. When my younger sister Emily announced her engagement last year, I was truly happy for her. We used to be so close growing up, sharing everything. That's why what happened at her wedding hit me so hard. I had spent weeks picking out the perfect gift, finding the right dress, thinking about my hair, all to show Emily how much I cared, even with us growing apart. When I got to the reception, after a beautiful but strangely quiet ceremony, I looked at the fancy seating chart for my name. My heart sank when I found it. Table 19, the very last table from the main table, right by the swinging kitchen doors where servers would be rushing in and out all night. I stood frozen, watching as the wedding planner led Emily's college roommate and her husband to a table close to the family. This couple, whom Emily had only known for 2 years, got special treatment. Meanwhile, I, her only sister, was basically next to the serving carts and trash area. Something inside me finally gave way after months of little hurts like this. Without making a scene or saying a word, I just picked up my small clutch purse and walked out of the hall. I was halfway across the parking lot when I heard angry footsteps behind me. "Sarah, where do you think you're going?" I turned to see Michael, my sister's brand new husband, his face red with what looked like anger as he walked quickly towards me. In that moment, I had no idea that this talk would uncover years of lies and change my relationship with my sister forever. Growing up, Emily and I were the kind of sisters everyone wished they had. We were only 3 years apart. We shared a bedroom until I was 13, whispering secrets late into the night and planning our adventures for the next day. I was the older sister who protected her. If kids at school picked on her for her small stutter or her braces, I was there. I helped her with homework, taught her how to put on makeup, and stayed up all night helping her write her college essays. Our family was not rich, but our parents worked hard to give us chances. Still, I noticed early on that Emily often got special treatment. Mom and Dad thought she was the sensitive one who needed more care, while I was expected to be strong and understanding. Even so, our bond stayed strong through high school, and I never felt bad about the extra care she got. When Emily got into a special university in New York with some money for school, I was the one who drove her 6 hours to campus. I helped her decorate her dorm room and cried the whole way home alone. That first year, we talked almost every day. But slowly, the calls became weekly, then monthly. When she came home for holidays, she seemed different. More polished, more worried about how things looked. Her new friends were all from rich families, and I saw how she carefully showed her life on social media to match theirs. Still, I supported her growth. I sent her care packages during exams and listened when she called with roommate problems. After she finished college and got a public relations job at a famous company, I drove to New York again to help her move into her first apartment. That's when she introduced me to Michael Jenkins, the son of a big builder and her coworker. He seemed truly kind and looked at Emily with real love. I was happy for her, even as I noticed how she quietly changed stories about our childhood, talking more about our parents' jobs and less about our regular upbringing. When they said they were getting married last Christmas, I immediately offered to help with wedding planning. I was excited to reconnect with my sister through this big life event. I did not realize then that the growing space between us was about to become a huge gap, or that the wedding would show how completely she had cut me out of her carefully built new life story. The first signs were small, so small that I told myself I was just imagining things. First came Emily's engagement party, hosted by Michael's parents at their country club. I offered to help plan, but Emily told me Michael's mother had everything handled. When I arrived, I found that everyone had special drinks named after them. Everyone except me. When I casually mentioned it, Emily laughed and said, "Oh, I guess we forgot the Sarah drink." Then came the bridal shower 3 months before the wedding. I thought, as her sister, I would be helping to organize it with her maid of honor. But instead, I got a formal invitation in the mail. When I arrived, Emily's friends greeted me with polite confusion. "Oh, you're the sister," Emily said. "You might be too busy with work to be involved." During the shower, when I tried to join the group games, the maid of honor asked if I would mind serving drinks instead, since I was not part of the wedding activities planning. I swallowed my hurt and did as asked, watching from the side. As Emily opened gifts and shared stories with friends who seemed to know her life better than I did, the bachelorette trip hit even harder. I found out about it after it happened, when photos showed up on social media of Emily and 8 friends in Miami. When I texted her asking why I was not invited, she wrote back, "It was last minute, and I knew you couldn't get time off work." But I later learned from her friends' social media that the trip had been planned for months. Every time I tried to connect with her, it was met with canceled coffee dates and short phone calls. "Wedding planning is just so crazy right now," became her constant excuse. The dress fitting was perhaps the first time I could not ignore what was happening. When I arrived at the bridal shop, excited to see my sister's dress and the bridesmaid options, Emily took me aside. "Sarah, I hope you understand, but I've decided on a different look for the bridal party," she said carefully. "Your body type would change the look I'm going for." I stood there stunned as she explained I would still have a special part handing out programs before the ceremony. That night, I called my mother in tears, only to be told, "Honey, it's her special day." Sometimes brides get a little self-centered. Just support her decisions. I tried to tell myself this was normal stress before a wedding, that Emily was just caught up in planning the perfect day. Then came the call where she asked if I could give $3,000 for the flowers. "Since you're not paying for a bridesmaid dress," she explained, as if she had done me a favor by keeping me out of the bridal party. When I asked about having a say in the flower design, since I was helping pay, she laughed. "Oh, Sarah, you know, your taste is a bit different. Let's leave it to the professionals." For the first time, I wondered if I was being too sensitive or if something was truly wrong with our relationship. As the wedding got closer, the pattern of leaving me out became impossible to ignore. I tried many times to reach out to Emily, suggesting we have a sisters' night like we used to, just to reconnect before her big day. Each time she had reasons: meetings with sellers, work problems, plans with Michael's family. 2 weeks before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner hosted by Michael's parents at a fancy restaurant, I arrived early to help with name cards. But I found my name at a back table with distant cousins I barely knew, while Emily's college roommate sat at the family table. Through the evening, I tried to join in talks, to be supportive and present, but Emily hardly noticed me. While getting another drink at the bar, I heard her talking to a group of her friends. "My sister. Yeah, she's the one by the pillar. She's still single, focusing on her little design business. Not everyone can handle the corporate world," she said with a laugh that made my chest feel tight. I slipped away to the bathroom, fighting back tears. The next day, I stopped by my parents' house where wedding preparations were happening. Emily was meeting with the photographer, and I heard them talking about family photo groups. "We'll do your parents, then you and Michael with your parents, then with his parents," the photographer was saying. "What about photos with me?" I asked from the doorway. Emily looked surprised, then dismissive. "We need to keep formal photos short for time. We can grab something casual later if there's time." Later that week came the salon event. We were supposed to get our hair done together the day before the wedding. It was one of the few sister activities Emily had agreed to. But when I arrived, she looked at my highlighted brown hair with a frown. I was thinking, would you consider dyeing it darker? The highlights might look too casual in the family photos. When I said that a sudden color change might not turn out well, she sighed. "It's just that everyone else will be so polished." That evening, my father called. He rarely got involved in our relationship, but he sounded worried. "Sarah, your mother says you've been difficult about the wedding plans. Can't you just go along with what Emily wants? You know how she gets when she's upset." I wanted to explain how much the past months had hurt, but the tired tone in his voice told me he had already taken her side, as usual. The final blow came at the welcome dinner the night before the wedding. I was introduced to Michael's best man, who looked at me with surprise. "Oh, you're the sister. From how Emily described you, I was expecting." He stopped awkwardly. "Expecting what?" I asked. He moved uncomfortably. "Nothing bad, just we all got the idea you were kind of the family outsider. You know, the difficult one with the different lifestyle." I excused myself and found a quiet spot to call my best friend, Rachel. "Am I crazy?" I asked her, keeping my voice low. "Is it normal to be treated this way by your sister?" Rachel's long pause told me everything. "Sarah," she finally said, "what Emily's doing isn't normal, and you're not overreacting. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" The morning of Emily's wedding was bright and clear. Perfect weather for the garden ceremony she had planned. Despite everything, I arrived early at my parents' house where Emily was getting ready, carrying a tray of coffee and pastries for everyone. "I thought you might need some fuel for the day," I said, trying for a fresh start. Emily barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, thanks. The makeup artist will be here in 20 minutes. Can you use the side entrance when they arrive? We've set up the living room for photos and don't want to get in the way." As family and bridesmaids filled the house, I found myself sent to the kitchen, helping my aunt arrange snack platters instead of being part of the happy wedding preparations. When I tried to peek into the living room where Emily was having photos taken with my mother and her bridesmaids, the wedding planner stopped me. "Family photos are after the ceremony. This is just for the bridal party." I nodded and moved back, swallowing another small hurt. Before leaving for the wedding place, I placed my wedding gift, an envelope with proof of the honeymoon upgrade I had spent a lot on, adding a private beachfront dinner and couples massage to their Bali trip on the gift table. It had cost me nearly $1,000, a lot of money since my business was just starting to make a profit. But I wanted to show Emily that despite everything, I still cared deeply about her happiness. At the ceremony site, a beautiful garden behind an old mansion, I was confused when the wedding planner told me to sit in the 5th row, while the first 2 rows were for close family and the bridal party. "But I'm her sister," I explained, confusion clear in my voice. The planner checked her list. "I have you seated with extended family. Close family is just parents and grandparents for this event." Through the ceremony, I fought back tears that others would think were from happiness, rather than the deep hurt I felt. Emily looked beautiful, and I tried to focus on her joy as she and Michael said their vows, instead of the ache in my chest. As guests moved to the cocktail hour in a tent next to the garden, I noticed how Emily's college friends formed a protective circle around her, expertly blocking my attempts to go up and congratulate her. I made my way to the bar, thinking that maybe a glass of wine would help me get through the rest of the event. While waiting for my drink, I heard a talk between 2 women I knew as Emily's coworkers. "Which sister did you say had the meltdown during planning?" one asked. The other nodded in my direction. "That one. Emily said she's been impossible the whole time, making everything about herself. Classic middle child syndrome or something." I grabbed my wine and moved away quickly, feeling my face burn with shame and anger. When my parents finally came up to me, it was only to ask if I would make sure my grandmother found her seat at the reception. "Emily's a bit overwhelmed with greeting Michael's extended family," my mother explained, though I saw she had time to take photos with her friends. By the time guests were told to go to the main reception hall, I had finished my first glass of wine. It was the first alcohol I had allowed myself all day, wanting to stay clear-headed to support Emily. As I placed the empty glass on a passing server's tray, I promised myself I would keep it together for the rest of the evening. I had no idea that my resolve would be tested beyond its breaking point within the next 30 minutes. The reception was in a stunning converted barn with crystal lights and white roses hanging from the ceiling. A string group played softly as guests came in, looking for their assigned tables. I went to the elegantly written seating chart, scanning for my name among the 100 or so guests. When I finally found Sarah Miller at table 19, I had to check the table map again to confirm what I thought. Table 19 was the furthest from the main table, placed right next to the swinging kitchen doors where servers would be rushing in and out all evening. I stood frozen, watching as the guests around me found their places and moved happily to their tables. Most of Emily's friends were at tables 1 through 5, closest to the main table where my sister, Michael, and their parents would sit. Even Michael's mother's tennis partners had better seats than I did. With a deep breath, I went to table 19, where I found myself seated with the company accountant's husband, a distant cousin of Michael's who lived overseas, and 3 people who seemed to be last-minute additions to the guest list. None of them knew Emily well. "How do you know the bride?" one woman asked me. When I replied, "I'm her sister," all 5 table mates looked surprised. One even asked, "Her only sister?" As if unable to understand why I would be seated so far away. Before the first dish was served, I decided to speak directly with Emily. I went to the main table when she was not surrounded by bridesmaids. "Emily, I noticed I'm seated by the kitchen doors. Was that on purpose?" My sister barely looked at me as she fixed her veil. "We had to put you somewhere, Sarah." The seating chart was a nightmare to figure out. Then, lowering her voice, she said, "Why do you always have to make things about you? Can't you just be happy for me today?" I went back to table 19, stunned by her dismissal. Through dinner, the kitchen doors swung open again and again, hitting my chair each time servers rushed through with trays. The noise made talking at our table almost impossible, and twice a server accidentally bumped into me, nearly spilling sauce on my dress. As I watched the reception from my lonely spot, the truth of my situation became very clear. This was not just about a bad table seat. It was the end result of a pattern where Emily had steadily pushed me to the edge of her life. The final insult came during the champagne toast. Servers gave out glasses to each table, starting with those closest to the main table. By the time they reached table 19, they had run out of champagne. "We'll bring more shortly," a server promised. But the toasts began and ended before our table received any. As Michael's best man finished his speech and guests clinked their glasses, I sat with an empty space in front of me, a perfect symbol for my place in Emily's life. In that quiet moment, as the band began to play the first dance song and guests gathered around the dance floor, a clear understanding washed over me. I did not deserve this treatment. No amount of family loyalty required me to sit through more shame. Without drawing attention to myself, I picked up my small purse, slipped out through a side door, and walked across the parking lot toward my car, my heels clicking on the asphalt in time with my pounding heart. The cool evening air hit my face as I walked quickly toward my car, fumbling for keys in my clutch. I was not crying, not yet, but I felt a dangerous pressure building behind my eyes. I just needed to get to my hotel room before everything broke. I had almost reached my car when I heard quick footsteps behind me. "Sarah, stop right there." Michael's voice rang out across the parking lot. I turned to find my sister's brand new husband walking quickly toward me, his face red and his bow tie crooked. His face was full of anger, and my first thought was that Emily had sent him to scold me for leaving. I got ready for his anger, squaring my shoulders. "What are you doing?" he demanded when he reached me. "You can't just leave in the middle of our wedding." Something inside me snapped. After months of swallowing my hurt, of making excuses for Emily's behavior, of trying to be the better person, I could not take one more minute of being treated like I was wrong for having feelings. "Your wedding," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. The one where I was seated next to the kitchen doors while people who barely know Emily got special treatment. The wedding where I was not included in family photos. Where I was asked to enter through the staff entrance. That wedding. Michael's angry face softened. Confusion crossed his features. "What are you talking about?" "You're her only sister." "Exactly," I said, the hurt finally breaking through my calm. "I'm her only sister, and she's treated me like an unwanted stranger through this entire process. Tonight was just the final straw." Michael's face shifted from confusion to something that looked strangely like understanding. "Sarah," he said slowly, "Emily told me you asked to be seated away from family because you were uncomfortable with formal events. She said you specifically asked not to be in photos or the bridal party." I stared at him in shock. "What? That's completely untrue. Why would I want that?" Michael ran a hand through his carefully styled hair. "She's been telling me for years that you two have a difficult relationship because you are jealous of her success. That you've tried to hurt her relationship with me many times." My mind spun as Michael continued, each new bit of information more shocking than the last. "She told me you tried to kiss me at the engagement party when you'd had too much to drink. That's why I've been so cold to you. I was trying to set boundaries. That never happened," I stammered, horrified. "We barely spoke at the engagement party." I left early because I wasn't feeling well. Michael's face darkened again, but this time his anger was not aimed at me. "I'm starting to see that. I actually came out here to say sorry when someone mentioned you'd left. I realized how you'd been treated today. I've been watching since the ceremony, and it didn't match what Emily has told me about you causing scenes or always needing to be the center of attention." I leaned against my car, feeling dizzy with what Michael was saying. "She's been lying about me for how long?" "Since we started dating," Michael admitted. "Little comments at first about your jealousy, then bigger stories about your attempts to get in the way of our relationship. When we got engaged, she said you called her crying about how she always gets everything and that you threatened not to come to the wedding." I shook my head, pulling out my phone with trembling hands. "I have our text messages. Look at my reaction when she told me about the engagement." I showed him the screen displaying my excited, supportive messages, the offers to help with planning, the heart symbols, and true congratulations. Michael's face fell as he scrolled through more recent messages, my polite requests to be involved, Emily's increasingly distant and uncaring responses. "I don't understand," he said finally. "Why would she do this?" I did not have an answer, but as we stood there in the dark parking lot, the pieces were falling into place. The way Emily had steadily cut me off was not just wedding stress or not thinking. It was on purpose. She had been building a story where I was the bad person, the difficult sister, the family problem. And everyone, Michael, my parents, her friends, had believed it. The revelation left me breathless, as if I had been hit. Years of interaction suddenly made new sense, seen through this twisted view. And for the first time, I wondered if my sister, whom I had loved and protected our whole lives, might actually hate me. Back in my hotel room, I finally let the tears come. They were not pretty, picture-perfect tears, but ugly, gasping sobs that left my carefully put-on makeup ruined. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my dusty rose dress, and tried to understand everything Michael had told me. My phone lit up with a text from him. "I won't tell Emily about our talk tonight. You deserve to confront her yourself. I'm sorry I believed her without ever asking you." I appreciated his message, but could not find the energy to reply. Instead, I found myself scrolling through old photos, Emily and me building sand castles at the beach, helping her practice for her school play, celebrating her college acceptance letter. Had she resented me even then? Had I somehow missed the signs that she was making up this fake rivalry? Around midnight, my phone rang. My parents. I almost did not answer, but a lifetime of family duty won out. "Sarah and Miller," my mother started without introduction. "How could you leave your sister's wedding without saying goodbye? She's heartbroken." I closed my eyes, gathering strength. "Mom." Emily seated me by the kitchen doors with people who don't even know her. I wasn't included in family photos. The entire day I was treated like an unwelcome stranger. "Don't be so dramatic," my father interrupted. "You know how sensitive your sister is. Now she thinks you left because you're jealous of her happiness." Something inside me hardened. That's exactly what she wants you to think. Has it occurred to either of you that Emily might not be the victim here? That for years she's been twisting things for all of us, making me out to be the bad guy in her story. My mother gasped. Sarah, how can you say such things about your sister? Because they're true, I replied steadily. And if you took even a moment to consider how she's treated me through this entire wedding, you might see it too. Why is it that my feelings never matter in this family? Why am I always expected to make room for Emily's feelings while mine are ignored? The silence that followed told me my words had hit home, even if they would not admit it. We'll discuss this when everyone's calmer, my father finally said. Good night, Sarah. After they hung up, I felt strangely lighter. For the first time, I had directly challenged the family way of doing things that had shaped our relationships for decades. The next morning, I woke to a text from Michael. Can we meet for coffee? There's more I think you should know. Despite my doubts about getting between a newly married couple, I agreed. At a small cafe far from the wedding, Michael looked tired but determined. I couldn't sleep last night, he admitted. I kept thinking about all the things Emily has told me about you and how none of it matches what I've seen myself. Over the next hour, Michael shared more examples of Emily's made-up stories. She told him I refused to help with wedding planning because I was bitter about being single, that I had criticized her engagement ring behind her back, that I had told family friends she was marrying for money. With each new detail, the sister I thought I knew faded further away, replaced by someone planning and deeply unsure of herself. I don't know what to do, Michael said finally. I just married her yesterday, but I feel like I don't even know who she is. I felt a surge of understanding for him. You married the person you thought she was. That's not your fault. He looked at me thankfully. I owe you an apology for believing the worst without ever giving you a chance. We both trusted Emily, I said simply. As I drove home later that day, my mind churned with mixed feelings. Part of me wanted to cut ties completely to protect myself from more manipulation and hurt. Another part remembered the little sister who had once looked up to me, who had needed my protection. Could I leave her knowing that whatever made her act this way came from a place of pain? But the strongest feeling was a new determination. I would no longer allow the ways of doing things that had led to this situation. Whether I kept a relationship with Emily or not, it would be on new terms, with honesty and mutual respect, or not at all. Emily and Michael returned from their honeymoon 2 weeks later. While they were away, I had started therapy, seeking to understand my part in our troubled family system and to build healthier boundaries. When Emily texted a group of friends and family with honeymoon photos, acting as if nothing had happened at the wedding, I made my decision. I texted her directly. We need to talk about what happened at the wedding. When can we meet? Her response was as I expected, avoiding. I'm swamped unpacking and getting thank you notes written. Maybe in a few weeks. I refuse to let her put off this talk forever. This is important, Emily. I'll come to you this weekend, Saturday at 2. After several tries to change the time, she finally agreed. That Saturday, I arrived at her and Michael's fancy apartment with a folder of printed text messages, emails, and photos. Proof to counter the story I knew she would try to make up. Michael had agreed to be out for the afternoon. When Emily opened the door, her smile was strained. Sarah, I've been so busy with post-wedding chaos. Do you want some wine? Her attempt at a friendly sister connection felt empty after everything I had learned. No thanks, I replied, setting my folder on her coffee table. I'm here to talk about the stories you've been telling about me. Her face changed briefly before settling into innocent confusion. What are you talking about? I opened the folder. I know what you told Michael about me trying to kiss him at the engagement party. I know you told him I threatened not to come to your wedding out of jealousy. I know you told your friends I've been difficult and attention-seeking through the whole wedding planning. Emily's face hardened, her fake confusion gone instantly. He had no right to tell you any of that. Actually, he had every right, I said back. You've been steadily lying about me for years, Emily. You've painted me as jealous, unstable, and mean. Not just to Michael, but to everyone in your life. I want to understand why. Emily's eyes flashed with anger. You want to know why? Because everything has always come so easily to you. You were the pretty one, the smart one, the confident one. Mom and Dad always bragged about your grades, your achievements. Why can't you be more like Sarah? Was the constant sound of my childhood. I stared at her in disbelief. That's not how I remember it at all. Mom and Dad constantly spoiled you, made excuses for you, gave you special treatment. Only because you didn't need it, she shot back. You were so perfect on your own. Do you have any idea what it's like growing up in the shadow of someone who seems to effortlessly succeed at everything? I shook my head, trying to make her view fit with my own memories. Emily, if that's how you felt, why didn't you ever talk to me about it? Instead, you've spent years building clever lies to harm my relationships, including with you. I didn't think you'd understand, she said, her voice smaller now. And then it just grew. Her admission stunned me with its cold cruelty. So, you deliberately kept me out of your wedding, seated me by the kitchen, all to make this fake idea that I'm unstable and difficult? Emily's face changed to defiance. You're overreacting as usual. It was just a seating arrangement. It wasn't just the seating, I said firmly. It was a pattern of deliberate cutting me out and making me feel bad, and I won't accept it anymore. I laid out my rules clearly. I would no longer allow lies about me. I would not take part in family events where I was treated as less than, and our relationship could only continue if she agreed to therapy together to fix the patterns between us. You're being silly, she scoffed. I'm not going to therapy just because you got your feelings hurt over a seating chart. I stood up, gathering my folder. Then we don't have anything more to discuss. As I moved toward the door, Emily called out, her voice suddenly scared. So that's it? You're leaving me because I want it one day to be about me instead of you? This is exactly why I needed to keep you away during the wedding, because you always make everything about yourself. I turned back, seeing her desperate attempt to make herself the victim. No, Emily, I'm not leaving you. I'm refusing to be part of a relationship built on lies. If you ever want an honest relationship with me, I'll be ready, but I won't be your scapegoat anymore. Her final accusation followed me out the door. I bet you're trying to turn Michael against me too. Is that what this is about? You've always been jealous that I found someone before you did. I did not respond, closing the door quietly behind me. In the elevator down to the lobby, I felt a deep change within me. Not the joy of winning an argument, but the quiet strength of finally standing in my truth and refusing to accept treatment that lessened my worth. The 6 months after Emily's wedding became a time of great personal growth for me. I continued with therapy, working through not just the recent wedding drama, but the long-standing family ways that had led to it. My therapist helped me see how I had taken on the role of the one who always adjusted, always putting my needs and feelings aside to keep family peace. With her help, I began setting healthier boundaries with everyone in my life, not just my family. My relationship with Michael changed in unexpected ways. Though I was careful not to interfere with his marriage, we formed a friendship based on mutual respect and understanding. He shared that he and Emily had started couples counseling after he confronted her about the lies, though he admitted the progress was slow and hard. She still doesn't fully understand why her behavior was wrong, he told me during one of our occasional coffee meetings. But she's trying in her way. My parents' reaction surprised me the most. After our angry phone call the night of the wedding, I expected them to stand by Emily as they always had. Instead, my father called me 2 weeks later. Your mother and I have been talking, he said, his voice unusually unsure. We may have overlooked some things over the years. It was not a full admission of the unfair treatment, but it was a start. When I visited them for dinner a month after the wedding, I noticed small changes. My mother did not automatically dismiss my opinions. My father asked about my business with real interest. When Emily's name came up and my mother began to make excuses for her being absent, my father gently cut in. Let's just enjoy dinner with Sarah tonight, he said. The first family gathering after the confrontation was Thanksgiving. Emily and Michael arrived late, and I could feel her tension when she saw me already sitting comfortably in the living room. Through dinner, She tried several times to fall into our old ways, subtly trying to lessen my comments, making private jokes with our parents that left me out, hinting about my single status. Instead of pulling back or getting angry, I stayed calmly involved with everyone else while simply not reacting to her attempts to provoke me. After dinner, when Emily made a show of needing help in the kitchen, purposely asking everyone but me, I simply joined in anyway. "I'm happy to dry the dishes," I said pleasantly, ignoring her clear annoyance. By dessert, her methods had lost their power, and I could see confusion in her eyes. This new way of being was not part of her plan. The real breakthrough came 3 months after the wedding. Emily called me directly. Not a text, not through our parents, but an actual phone call. "Can we get coffee?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. At a quiet cafe near my office, she struggled to meet my eyes. "I've been seeing someone, a therapist," she admitted. Michael insisted, "but it's been helpful." She paused, fidgeting with her napkin. She suggested I might have some issues with competition and comparison, especially with you. It was not quite an apology, but it was more self-awareness than I had ever heard from her. "I am glad you're getting help," I said sincerely. "I am too." As winter turned to spring, our relationship began a careful rebuilding. The old closeness had not returned and might never fully return, but something new was taking its place. A relationship between adult sisters who were learning to see each other clearly without the twisted views of childhood roles and unchecked jealousies. By the time Emily and Michael's first anniversary approached, I had built a life that no longer spun around managing my family's thoughts. My design business was doing well. I had made deeper friendships with people who respected my boundaries, and I had even started dating someone who liked my direct way of talking. The Saturday before their anniversary, I hosted a dinner party in my newly made-over apartment. Around my table sat a group I had chosen on purpose. Close friends, a few family members, including my parents, Michael, and yes, Emily. As I looked around at the lively talk, the real laughter, the easy interactions, I felt a sense of peaceful success. I had created this warm and accepting space. I had chosen where each person sat. And most importantly, I had learned that while we cannot control how others treat us, we can absolutely decide what treatment we are willing to accept. When Emily caught my eye across the table and offered a small, true smile, I realized the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for someone is to stop protecting them from the results of their actions. By refusing to enable Emily's behavior, I had actually given her the chance to grow. The wedding seating chart that had caused me such pain had finally become the reason for both of us to break free from harmful patterns and begin building something healthier, not perfect, but real and endlessly more valuable than the carefully built fake fronts we had both been hiding behind. If you've ever felt similar family situations or felt like the difficult one for simply having boundaries, I hope my story speaks to you. Have you ever had to face hard truths in your family? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story helped you feel less alone, please like and subscribe for more stories about dealing with complex family relationships. Remember, setting boundaries is not selfish, it is needed for healthy relationships. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength on yours.